Backdoor cut from Andrew Gaze. You'll see plenty of those. What stuff from Andrew Gaze. First of many, I would think. What a move. 26-21. And whoa, by Gaze. They've got a 2-on-2. Gaze down the middle for two. Andrew Gaze gets two more. He's on track for this.
He's better, almost even money here.
Andrew Gaze adds another two. Trajan dishes outside for a three-point shot from Andrew Gaze. 50 points for Andrew Gaze. Now Gaze goes all on his own. Wow. Straight in the middle. He is quick. And a steal as well. And two more. The Tigers run out 28-point winners over the Illawarra Hawks. 186 to 151.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is NBL Rewind, hashtag NBL Rewind to get involved, and we are winding it back all the way back to July of 1991. The Snake Pit. Whew, the Melbourne Tigers were in town. It was Lindsay Gaze's 200th game coaching, and we had our man who ended up being the MVP that year, Andrew Gaze, a big part of it. Highest scoring game in NBL history. And Liam, I'll say hello to you. Hello, man.
Hello, mate. I'm excited to have the GOAT on the show.
Oh, here he is, Andrew Gaze. I'm assuming straight off the golf course as well, because if there's anything he loves is close to basketball, it's golf. The restrictions have been lifted here in the state of Victoria. So thank you for jumping off the green to say good day. Drew, how are you, man?
I am going very well, yes. Played a bit of golf. Actually, restrictions were lifted yesterday in Victoria. I know everyone, or most parts throughout the country, you have been able to play golf, but we haven't. So we've had an 8-week spell. So we've overdosed and played yesterday and again today. And it's good. It's good to be out there. Good fun.
Has isolation, quarantine, has it at all helped your golf game?
Well, here's the thing. We played yesterday, and I'm off just over 18 is my official handicap. And we played yesterday, and I think I played with Copes, and I had 93 off the stick. So we score off stroke. And so after a 8-week spell, 93, not too bad. And today we went back and we played the same course, same time, same everything, better conditions today, and I had 101. So clearly I need a 7 to 8 week break between each round in order to be able to perform to a level where at least you can be competitive.
Drew, have you been watching The Last Dance? You know, you and MJ, you blew up in the 90s, scoring titles, MVPs, shoes named after yourselves. Have you been enjoying just reveling in the similarities?
I have loved every single second of the documentary. I think it's been fantastic, and it's good to hear other people's opinions, and not just basketball people just sports lovers. And I haven't heard anyone. It's because we've been locked up for so long that we're just craving for anything, any type of reality television. And certainly with Michael Jordan, how honest and candid he's been, and the way in which they put this documentary together, the other people they've got to speak in it, I think it's been extremely well done, and it's been a delight to watch. And there is zero similarities between me.
Mate.
Now, hang on,
mate.
Hang on.
Absolutely zero, other than the fact we both need oxygen to live. That's about the extent of it. But because it's been extraordinary.
Hey, hang on, not all in time. Now, obviously, the Air Jordan continued to be manufactured all through this time, and the Gaze sneaker had a slight rest, but I believe is the Gaze sneaker coming back?
Yes, indeedy, my friend. It is coming back. We've got a few models coming out. I think the Jordan models I think they range between $250 and $300.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with mine, you just got to take off a zero. It's between 25 and $30 is all you've got to do. So it's very, very simple maths. And some would say reflective of our status and our contribution. But nevertheless, we feel like that we're putting together a real quality brand. Years ago, from about 2003 to about 2008 is when we sold a lot of pairs of shoes. And it's great. There's been a bit of murmurings going around about it coming back, and can't wait to be able to reveal it. We've had to put it on hold. We were going to be coming out in July in a major discount department store. But unfortunately, because of the coronavirus and with sports and particularly NBL not starting up, we've strategically postponed our launch. So if you two blokes do the right thing by me, a couple of $24.95 pairs of Gay shoes coming your way.
Good,
Wait,
man.
and I'll tell you
I,
this,
for one, really like and appreciate the price point, Drew, because I feel it matches your man of the people kind of vibe.
Here it is. And this is, because when we first did this back in the mid-2000s, I was right into it. I went over, visited the factories, learned all about the production, probably went and visited maybe 10 to 15 different shoe factories, saw how it's done. And when you see it and you get an understanding of it, the shoe that we are going to be producing, full file on midsole, very good rubber outsole, high quality PU upper. When you consider that, from a specification standpoint, it's as good as many of that sort of mid-range shoe that the big brands produce. So it's a lot of it's branding, as we know, but hopefully we've got some sexy looking shoes that the kids and blokes like yourselves, perhaps,
No doubt.
I'm not sure how good we'll be on that demographic between say 17 and 35, but the youngsters and older folk, not that you guys are that old, but hopefully that's where it's going to be our sweet spot.
Can't wait for that. I, for one, am a little disappointed that you didn't show up to NBL Rewind today smoking a cigar with a big glass of tequila next to MJ style, but hey, I'll give you a pass.
That's one of the things that stuck out to me the most. As great as this man was, and it's just extraordinary, and in my judgment, the greatest of all time. But when you see footage of him, was it the 97 player, they had some footage of him, not postseason, not after they won it, during the season in the locker room, chugging on a cigar. Now, for the young folk out there watching, I suggest that's perhaps not the best way to get the best out of yourself.
Well, I'll tell you what, you've just answered my first question, which was, did you walk into the snake pit in 91, puffing a stogie and say to Justin Withers, who am I dropping 59 on today? That didn't happen?
59, I thought it was 58, but I'm very happy to take it. You've always been prone to exaggerate, so I'm happy you exaggerated in my favour.
Hang on, that's 59, isn't it? Did you have 59?
Was it 59? I thought it was 58.
So.
59, I'm taking 59.
It's 59, I'm right.
Oh, good. But no, it was a different time, and that place, that Snake Pit, those old stadiums, I love, because I grew up in the old Albert Park Stadium with a seating capacity of about 1,100 when it was. And back in those days, there was no smoking bans. People were chuffing on. The coaches would be lighting up during the games, and it was a lot different. But when we were playing at the Snake Pit, I used to love it because it was very similar type atmosphere that you get at the old Albert Park Stadium. Now, the only thing they did have is that they had the bar up above the one end, and the rings were actually attached to it. So not only would they get a little bit loose with their support of the home team, they'd also start stomping their feet. And you go to the free throw line. It's the only gym that I've ever played at. When you go to the free throw line, and the ring was actually moving like this because of the way in which they were able to stamp their feet to try and give their home team a bit of an advantage. But it was a great place to play. Fans right on top of you. You wouldn't get away with it these days because the coach's bench, the fans were right, literally, to kick you in the back when you're sitting on the bench. So it was a fun place to play, and that was one of the more memorable games, probably if you ask my dad, for all the wrong reasons, but we quite enjoyed it.
Drew, it was 180 something to 150 something, 100 combined points in the opening quarter.
Yes.
How did that game play out that way?
Well,
hang on. Drew, before you answer this, let me read this, okay? 59-45 a quarter time.
Yep.
111 to 87 at the half.
Yes.
143 to 121 at three-quarter time.
Yes.
And then, as Liam just touched on, 186 to 158 full-time score.
Well, it was the most nervous 22-point lead we had at three-quarter time because the scores were so high. It was like, well, this game was well, we had a reasonable margin, as you could tell, right throughout, but it was one that, given the nature of the game, someone could reel off 10, 15 points in the blink of an eye. So it was one that you never really felt all that comfortable with. And a lot of people would, and perhaps rightly so, look at it and say, well, perhaps the defense wasn't all that flash. but it was such a high octane game. It was I forget, you guys that have the data there. My recollection was that it was more towards the end of the season.
Yeah,
and
it was.
And what it was is the Hawks were out of the playoffs. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Lindstrom was the coach of the Illawarra Hawks at the time.
Lindstrom was the coach, and my understanding is
and what happened?
So I was going to say, Stormer Norman Taylor was out, and I got told the other day. Someone said that they'd been told. Lindstrom said to the group, with no Stormer Norman, said we've got no chance of stopping them. Let's just try to outscore them.
Exactly, and what it was on the back of. Remember that Loyola Marymount team when Paul Westhead was introducing just that high octane, super fast way to play the game, and he was. David Lindstrom said, well, let's have a look at this. Let's just throw it out there and go up and down. And anyone that does, and it's back then it was a 30-second shot clock. Anyone that doesn't shoot it in the first 6 seconds of the offense was going to get subbed out. So there was a crazy set of circumstances where they were coming down and blazing away. And naturally, it's very difficult to get back on the defensive end when you're playing at such a pace. And not only that, they were trying to extend the defense. They were picking up full court. So you got over the front line of the defense, you had a numerical advantage most of the time. So we got a lot of laps. And if I had 59, I think I was, and you're really checking my memory, I think I was 2 of 6 from the three-point line. And I was something in the order of, I would have only missed 5 shots for the game. 7 shots for the game.
Middle ground, 6. 23 of 29 you were.
23.
You're close enough.
Outside of those 2, there was a mid-range one, the first shot of the game that got me cooking. And then pretty much the rest of them were layups. They were just layups. So
it was a demonstration video on the backdoor cut.
It
this
was.
Game.
It was probably a demonstration video of not what to do when a guy is looking to make a backdoor cut. And it was also one where you say it that you never want to get beat the same way twice. Well, they were getting beat the same way dozens of times.
Hashtag NBL Rewind to get involved. You might already watch the game. We might move on to the Andrew Gay's art of scoring conversation. What do you remember any emotions after the game when you walk out of a stadium and that's the score?
Yeah.
And it's the highest in the history of the NBL. You remember much of it?
Well, we didn't know whether to be. We were excited because we got the win. And it was not an easy place to get wins, regardless of the circumstances. And they had some issues with their personnel, with some injuries. But we still were going in there really nervous. And we had our eyes on a bigger prize at that stage and really concerned about trying to finish as high up in the ladder as we possibly could. So it was a critical game for us. And afterwards, it was one of those ones we sort of looked at each other and thought, well, should we be proud of this game or should we be embarrassed about this game? We weren't sure exactly what the emotion should be. Now, I guess it was one that that I look back on and say, hey, what the heck? You got to try different things and it's certainly going to be a long, long time, if that scoreline ever gets beaten, particularly now you're only playing 40-minute games. But it was still a lot of fun to be involved on. It wasn't as stressful. You didn't have to deal with the hacking and whacking and that real physical defense. And it was it's one that, in hindsight, as you look back on it, like you say, it was a long, long time ago, that I think it was one good for the records, good part of history, and you sort of move on.
Well, the stat man loves it. I think it might be his favourite game in NBL history. Cam, before we do move on to that conversation and we get Drew rolling on that, I want to throw a name at him that jumped out of this game for me as a great memory watching this guy play. Dave Colbert. I feel like maybe he, for most kind of onlookers of the NBL and over the course of history, how good he was has maybe slipped under the radar over time. And I think because maybe Copes came in and overshadowed him as that kind of, as your running mate, as a lead scorer on that squad. What are your memories of Dave Colbert?
Dave Colbert was a superstar. He was one that I think was NBA quality. Good size, good mobility up and down the floor, really, really good athlete. and perfectly positioned for what we would call the 4 spot. Now, as a 3-man, but we would call it the 4 spot in the way in which we'd numbered our team according to our offense. And inside, outside, and just a really great work ethic as well. He put in more time individually and actually got into a bit of trouble a few times because he'd go down to the old Albert Park Stadium on his own and he'd take some shots and little kids would be walking by and he'd be so focused on getting better, they'd come up and want to ask for an autograph and he sometimes perhaps didn't politely enough say, listen, I'm just in a workout here, because he was that committed. And I think it was one of his greatest strengths of how much he applied himself off the floor as to why he was so great. But probably the thing that he didn't do well enough in order to get to the NBA was go off the dribble. He could shoot off, 1 or 2 dribbles to create his shot. That was about the limit of what he could do. He didn't have that same finesse to break people down off the dribble. But it's because he had his size, he could shoot over people, he'd rebound, run the floor, great teammate. He was really good, and I think that he was NBA quality, just one of those guys that, like you have with Leroy or guys playing the NBA, but they sure as hell were good enough to play in the NBA.
Who was better at their peak, Dave Colbert or Marcus Timmons?
Wow, that's a good one. They both really, really good.
Played the same spot in the shot.
Yeah, they did. They did. That's a real good question and a tough one. I'd probably lean towards Marcus at his best. Maybe Colby, he was probably a little bit more reliable in certain elements, but Marcus's best is another one that was just good enough to be playing any league in the world. He was just an elite athlete, developed his range got better when he came to Australia as opposed to when he was at college, and he'd get up and down the floor. And yeah, Marcus Timmons was a stud.
And ironically called the Snake Pit home for a year too when he first came to the NBL.
And we've told this story many, many times. It was only through my close relationship with Brett Brown that he ended up with us. He was played in Illawarra, went and played overseas somewhere, had a tough time of it, and was coming back because I think he had a girlfriend or something that was in Illawarra. And it just so happened that the North Melbourne Giants were playing against the Illawarra Hawks, and we had Jarvis Lang, who was another great player. Had a really almost single-handedly won a game against the Magic for us in that year in 97, early on in the season, but had really bad knees and wasn't going to be able to see the season through. So we had Jarvis Lang, but we made the decision we've got to replace him because he wasn't going to hold up. And just out of coincidence, I called up Brett because just to say good day, talk to him about his game against Illawarra. And he was asking, he said, oh, what's happening with Jarvis? I said, mate, we're trying to find someone. And he goes, you know what? I was just in the lobby of the hotel in Illawarra, and Marcus Timmons, I just had a good chat with Marcus Timmons. Why don't you give him a call? He's in the country. Give him a buzz and see if he... So sure enough, within 2 hours, we got onto him, called him up, and he said, yeah, I'm available. So I think that was like on a Saturday night. He got on a plane on a Sunday. First training session was on the Monday, and straight after the first training session, he come out, we were shooting it, playing that 4 spot magnificently. We said, let's sign this guy. He's our man. And if not for that stroke of luck, and that fickle hand of fate works in mysterious ways, and if it's not for that situation, we may not have that. I may not have that second ring and won that title in 97.
What was your record when he arrived?
We were in a bad way. We ended up. We started the season 3-9. Now we weren't really 3-9. We'd actually won 4 games. We beat the Adelaides. That we had a weekend where Mark Radke came back because he was with the Sixers. So Mark Radke came back late in that season, and we had a home game against Adelaide on the Friday night, and the derby against the Magic. So Hoagie comes back and gets us on track, has a hellacious game against the Adelaide 36ers, unbelievable alley-oop dunk. He got another one. He caught it straight up and stuffed it. He was just itching to get out the game. And then the next morning, the day of the game, we got a phone call from Basketball Australia and said, you've ineligible. Mark Bragge was ineligible for this game because he didn't have the official documentation. We had all the clearances. They'd all been submitted, and it was really just a technicality that so because of that, we couldn't play him on the Saturday night. So we actually had beaten the Adelaide 36ers, but they took that win off us. But then we came back in that us against the world mentality on that Saturday night and got hold of the Magic in another cracking derby game.
It really reeks of a 10 a.m. Wednesday night game at MSAC when you're trying to sneak a better player in to your F grade competition and you're hoping no one finds out. Except Frankie drops 35 and 19 boards fresh off the plane from the NBA in front of the national audience.
The sticking point was we'd actually got the clearances from the Philadelphia 76ers. And once you get that clearance, we submitted the clearance to FIBA. And my understanding that it's just a formality for them. They just because the club that he's coming from, he played with us the previous 5 seasons, so it wasn't like it was something new. And he played with us the previous season, so it was just one that there was just a technicality in there, and we had some overly officious people running the NBA, the NBL at the time, and they felt that it was necessary to go to the fine details of what should have happened.
All's well that ends well, and in the end of that title in 97.
Well, we finished. We were 3-9. We were in a real hole, and
Mate, there was calls for your dad to be sacked, wasn't there?
My word, there were, and it was. We had a really good team. As I said, Jarvis Lang was there at the start of it. We had some issues with players, a rocky start to the season, but we always knew that we'd be able to get it together. It was a hell of a head start, and then we reeled off 17 in a row, including the first 2 games, the first game of the grand final series. And then, unfortunately, the Magic snapped our 17-win game winning streak, and in that game too. And then the foofer valve got real tight, but we were able to come back and get the win in game 3.
All right. You mentioned before about Illawarra and their run and gun and a little bit of a different, hey, we can't really stop many people, so we're going to try and outscore these people. So when you're looking at that type of situation from a scoring point of view and individually here, are you tinkering your mindset based on the defensive capabilities of who you're going up against, team or individual, or are you looking and chatting to your teammates about different ways to get you involved? Maybe Warwick Giddy, who found you on those dimes so many times on the back door. Did you change your mindset going to different games based on who you were playing?
Not really. What it was, and Liam would understand this because he was with us for a number of years, but it's a system-driven culture and product that we were doing. It was very much system-driven and in the sense of your responsibilities according to each position on the floor. It was a continuity. The shuffle, by and large, like the flex or other offenses, it's a continuity offense, and there's really no points of emphasis that you'll put on that offense. Flex is mostly an offense that is run from cutting off the low post. The major difference between the flex and the shuffle is that you're coming the high post. The shuffle is a foul line extended cutting to the basket offense with post up, cutting, screening, on-ball action, depending on where the ball goes. So for me, it was about understanding the system and then trying to exploit it, how you get yourself free within that system. I was, because of my athleticism, which wasn't off the charts, I was relying on others buying into that system. So whether it was Nigel Purchase, Warwick Giddy, Robert Sibley, Dave Simmons, feeders were critical for me to score. And that's 2 parts. So the individuals involved in our offense, they needed to be conditioned to understand the eye contact, the body language, the little nuances of how you move in order to get free. I had an advantage because of my size, and when you've got a big guy cutting to the basket, you've got a bigger target, of course. But I was more system. And one of the most asked questions I had, well, who was your toughest opponent? And sure, there were some great ones. Mike Kelly, Darren Lucas, Jason Smith. There's a whole bunch of players that individually presented enormous challenges. But the biggest challenges were more the coaches and the way in which strategically they would coach against you. So Brian Gorgon was hard for me to play against because he had an elite individual defender combined with rules about how in which they stopped you. And some of those rules, as he's openly declared, was how many times can we smash him? How many times can they elbow him? And working with Luke Kendall, who played for Brian, they'd chart it. They'd have charts. And
it was the Drury rules. Sam Smith wrote a book about it, Drew. It's the Drury rules.
Yeah.
Is that right? Well, whatever it is, they were the toughest things to deal with. That is the team concepts, and that were the hardest to get by. Now, strangely, I didn't particularly like going up against zone defenses. You might get more open from the perimeter and you get more perimeter shots, but, it's a bit of I could shoot it, of course, but the bulk of my scoring came from the free throw line and getting to the rim. So zone defenses made it a whole lot harder. Now, strangely enough, the North Melbourne Giants, they played a lot of zone and just fortunately under Brett Brown. And fortunately, most times I did quite well against that particular zone, but I was, not that I would ever tell anyone, but I was more anxious than I was against man-to-man.
I can imagine it was like a comfort zone sort of feeling, like you felt more comfortable playing against the man-to-man. And I feel like, watching you over the years, practicing against you, I always felt like there was an element of martial art to you at the offensive end. Because in martial art, obviously, like black belt karate, it's all about using whatever your opponent does, using their offense and their attack against them. Yep. And your ability to, like a pressure D, cut back door, or you're a step, you go to run the shuffle cut, the first cut and the third option. You go that way, I go this way, and I punish you over the top. Yep. You want to come with me? I'm going to go that way, and I'll get you this side. Is that, have you ever thought about it in lines of martial art?
You're 100% correct. And what it is, it's an ability to read the defense and know in a split second, if you see someone do something, what is the counter to exactly what they're doing? And I was reliant on getting cheap baskets. I needed to find a way to get cheap baskets. That's the only way you can score. I mean, you look at the numbers, and now it's great because it's, a lot of the games people don't see anymore, and they can't judge you. They just look at the sheer numbers and go, crikey, have a look at these numbers. But in all honesty, it's a bit of a con. It is a bit of a the numbers.
Because you were the master of getting those cheap baskets.
True, but it's not as to me, and maybe this just is the mindset. That's easy to do. Now, having been in coaching and trying to get people to understand that, I have a greater appreciation the time and effort that it is to teach superstars, veterans, and to get them to believe in it, to say, hey, we can get this going if you can just buy into this. Now, I was very lucky because I did it from a young age, and it was ingrained in me the whole way. But Liam, you're absolutely spot on in regards to when you're not a super athlete, how do you create those opportunities? And yep, you got to be able to shoot the ball, no doubt about it. Have to be able to do that. But that's only part of it. The other part is reading the defense. And I tell you, when I'm running exchange and I get on the wing, two passes away, I knew straight away.
You had him.
Gone. Absolutely gone. Because I'd seen it so many times, been there before. I see where he's on the floor. I can see the way he's positioned his foot, or I can see him up in. And I loved it when they'd come up and go, right, I'm going to get physical with him. And they'd come up and they'd be holding him.
Yeah.
Like,
Little tap.
Yeah, and I'm almost encouraging him to do it, saying,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is too hard. Don't do it." But I know I've got you beat if you do that, because the slightest push, the slightest push off, you're gone on those backcourt door cuts, provided you got the timing right.
Mm-mm. Hey, you spoke about the numbers, the sheer weight of numbers. You scored nearly 19,000 points across your NBL career, 40 or more in a game, over 100 times. Averaged 44, as you'd remember, in that 1987 season, 44 a game, 16 times scoring leader. Did you have in your mind, like, was 30 a number that existed in your mind, stepping out on the floor each and every night? Like, and did you break it down quarter by quarter like some scorers have done? I get 8 a quarter, I'm going to end up with that. Or was it just play by play?
It was pretty much play by play. And not a lot of people would believe me, and I get it. I'm not going to be criticized for not believing me. But in all honesty, it wasn't about saying, well, I've got to go out here and get 30 or 35. It was about, like I said, go out and play the system. And the system was built around me getting more opportunities than some of the other guys. When I was gone, Copes averaged 30 because it was the system. The system was just, of course, you've got to know the system. You've got to have the skill for the system. So I'm not trying to, downplay that much. But the system was extremely helpful in able to get those types of numbers. And for me, it was, again, predicated on cheap baskets. Yeah, there was some threes and there was some games where we got cooking, and you've got to be able to do that. In order to get overplayed, you've got to be able to make a three.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to have that in your repertoire. But I was really going out there knowing I had to score because that was my job and what I had to do. But I was never anxious if I didn't. I always knew that somehow or other I felt like there was a way in which it was going to happen eventually. So eventually, at some stage, you might have a big quarter and not have a big quarter. And I remember there was the Tigers have been on their website, their YouTube channel, been putting up some games. And I watched a game they put up the other day of us playing against the Giants. It was game 2 of the semi-final series in '97 that we've just been talking about. And had 26 points in the first 14 minutes, the first quarter and a bit, and ended up with 34, I think. So there was times when you'd have these periods where you go on these, you'd be very streaky and you build it up. There are other games where it'd be consistent right throughout. So it varied depending on the opponent and how you do it. And hey, make no mistake, there was a few games where there's a bit of a margin in the end, and we might have just snuck out the back a little bit to pick up a few cheapies along the way as well.
All right. Based on everything you've just said, based on your knowledge of coaching in recent years with the way the basketball is currently played, not only here in Australia, but all around the world, how would you go today?
Well, it's an interesting. The game is a lot more athletic. The rules have changed with the shot clock. I personally welcome the change rules. I feel like the change rules would have helped me because there's more scoring that you can do. Just do the math. You've got a 14-second reset. You've got a 24-second shot clock. Most of the time, a lot of the time I was playing under a 30-second shot clock rule. So there's some of those games that we used to play in a 48-minute game, particularly against the Magic. You got 90 points. That was a high-scoring game. So it was a different time you had to do back then. And I think, though, because the game these days, a lot of it is just with the ball and how in which you got to guard with the ball. And unfortunately, it's something that I was not able to perhaps do a lot of. We did a bit of it, but wasn't able to get more of what I think could work and be successful in this game when I was with the Kings. I thought we did really, really well and found it, by the end of it, we found a really nice balance. But to get more action off the ball than on the ball. I love the on-the-ball action. I love all the on-ball action that we're seeing these days. But there is an art and a way in which to find cheap baskets with action off the ball. And watching a lot of the defenses, and when you're a coach in the NBL, you're doing 60 hours a week of watching tape, of watching other games. And not to say that Copes and I get there and look at it and go, crikeys, wouldn't we love to have been able to go up against this? Eh? So there is an element to that, but it's really hard because the athletes these days, unlike Bogues and Kev and that, they used to say, you guys played against plumbers. You were playing against plumbers and carpenters because, but it wasn't quite that bad, but certainly the athleticism these days would be more of a challenge.
What do you think what do you think they'd take away from you now that you used to get? Because you had the range, you'd be knocking it down, you get to the free throw line, you'd still be setting guys up off the ball in the same way.
Nothing.
Yeah, I agree.
There'd be nothing to take away. It's
so
just whether or not.
So you'd still lead the league in scoring, Drew, is what we're saying.
Pardon me?
You'd still lead the league in scoring.
I think with the system, under the system, I'm stuffed without the system.
Yeah, you can take the system with you, mate. We're not restricting the system.
With us, and the priorities are the same, then I can't see whether it's Copes. But I say that for all these guys. I say that for Shane Hill. Shane Hill would torch this league right now. Derek Rucker would kill this league right now. I mean, God love these new guys, and as you should, they are super, super, super talented. Leroy would give them fits. I mean, it's not even close. But that's an old guy trying to be objective about it. But that's what I see in the changes of the game works to their benefit, not to their disadvantage.
We're going to be
Where
careful
the disadvantage comes in is at the other end. I think at the other end, guys, but that's kind of how it is today. And these days, the individual matchups are absolutely critical and your individual skills. But again, without a defensive system at the other end of the floor, if it's a one-on-one battle, it's going to go in the favor of the offense more than the defense most of the time. So you need a system defensively if you're going to contain these guys.
We've got to be careful here. Hammer made about 5 comebacks, and if he hears those words, he might actually go for number 6.
No, but all those guys, Cope's the same. Cope's inside, outside. And again, I'm a little old school in the sense that I get analytics. I absolutely get it. And coach to it to a degree. But I'm not all in the analytics category to say this is come – no matter what, we're not doing this regardless, because I think that there are some players in our league that you say can benefit from mid-range as well. I don't buy the analytics. And if those that are 100% say, well, you're wrong, analytics, I hope like hell they're watching this documentary on Michael Jordan, because he was a freak everywhere on the floor. But he was a mid-range guy. You say, this is just, how do you stop it? So it's, it's a different generation. The game's played differently. But I still think that there is a balance in there somewhere that provides the best of both worlds.
Because you shot a lot of long twos.
Absolutely.
There was a lot at the rim, a lot of free throws, and obviously a whole bunch of threes. But the shot fake, one dribble,
correct,
that wasn't a side dribble.
Nope. That's it. And we were encouraged to do that. Our coaches and our system felt like that is a good shot. Now, today, that is not regarded as a good shot. You or those that are involved in the analytics will come up with the data. But the data doesn't always equate to every individual skill sets. You take Jerome Randall, Kevin Lish's examples and say, well, the data says if you get to – the overall data says you get to the rim, that's a better shot, get fouled, better shot around the rim. With Jerome Randall, there are times, depending on what type of contested mid-range shot he's taking, and same with Kevin, where I felt much more happier with them with those types of shots than some of the other ones to push it to a point where you're going to get to the rim. Now, that's maybe why I'm sitting here talking to you guys and not somewhere else. But, hey, that's what I believe.
Hashtag NBL Rewind to get involved. any one game outside of this one, Drury, before we let you go, any one game of your career you go back and watch a little more or would like to watch again?
Well, because of us staying at home, I probably watched more of my own games these days in the last 6 weeks than I ever did throughout my entire career. For the first time, I saw a replay of my Seton Hall game because they were on their final game.
Jeez, I've been pumping that doco out a bit.
Well, I much more enjoyed the semi-final than the final. But I wasn't one, outside of edits, and the coaches do video edits and they show you chunks of games, really never sat there and watched the whole game. Didn't do a lot of that, whereas I have, like I said, because the Tigers have been putting stuff up on their YouTube channel, I've stood there, and because we've got stuff all else to do, you start there and go, you continue to watch it. And I'm probably less impressed with my own. I see more flaws now than what I remembered when I watched these videos. So I've got to be real selective and be in the right frame of mind to sit down and watch it, because you do become really, really critical.
Let me just quickly piggyback on that though, Cam. People talk about that feeling of cooking, in the zone, and there's nothing like it. And you only experience it a few times. You experienced it week after week after week during your heyday. Is there one game that you felt those juices flowing the most? Like, can you remember having that experience of like, I literally am not going to miss tonight?
Yeah, there was many games you look back on and you have that feeling, and it might only stay with you for a quarter. Sometimes it was for the whole game, but it might be for a half or a quarter, and you've just got the sensation and that confidence and the belief that as long as I'm open, this sucker is down. You just know it is down.
Yeah.
And there are times in big moments, there were times, there was a game, I can't remember if it was 96 or 97 against the Magic in the last quarter, where I hit some bullshit, they're rubbish shots. I mean, they were rubbish shots. But at the time, I just knew they were going in.
Right.
Just, they were going in. That game that they put up and that was on there against the Giants in that first 16 minutes, I'm 9 of 9 with 5 of 5 from 3 point. And you just go, please, just get me. I just want to. And it is the greatest feeling in the game of basketball. And it's not for everyone, because and what I do now, whether I'm coaching the juniors or when I was coaching the seniors, that feeling you can get with other aspects of the game. There'd be times when Warwick Giddy was out there and he's just locking someone up, and you can see that he's got him in fits, and he goes, he was having those same intrinsic rewards as what I would get when I'm knocking down shots. Right. Now,
so Warwick Giddy's thinking, if I get the next reverse layup I get, this sucker's down.
Yeah.
That's it.
There is no way I'm missing a reverse layup tonight.
No, but he would have that same thing, sliding his feet and just knowing wherever this guy chooses to go, I've got him. Mm-hmm. And you just get that feeling that I've got him. Mark Radke would get in the groove and say, you know what? This ball is I'm going to get 25 boards here, because it just, everywhere I go, the ball comes to me. And the game comes so easy to you. And it's the greatest feeling you can have in sport, when the game becomes so easy. Everything's coming to you. You just got this wave of confidence. And I've never done drugs before in my life, but I reckon that feeling would be hard to top. And I think that that's what we strive for, those moments. And it's that euphoria in the locker room. It's those moments in the games when you've got those feelings. They are the things that make the game so great.
Did anyone ever say to you, oh, probably not a good shot to take, Drewy?
Oh, absolutely.
What? Who? Not your dad.
No, not my dad. He was very rarely.
Who then? You're averaging 40-year game for 15 years. Give me someone who would say maybe not. Like you've earned a little bit of, hey, I took a bad shot every now and then.
First time in the green and gold.
Yeah, no, it's more context of the game. There are a couple of times when I played in Italy, the coach hadn't yet got accustomed to my style, and early on he might have suggested that perhaps we might need to see this ball go through a few more sets of hands before we launch that one. So there have been times when that's the case, but I've been super, super lucky. Whether I was with the Australian team, whether I was with my club team, or when I played in Italy, played in Greece, they've seen what I was doing. They understand my strengths. I tried to camouflage my weaknesses, and I was always placed in situations where I could use my skills to my best abilities. Not everyone gets those opportunities, and I was lucky that most of the time I had those opportunities.
Which single shot is the one that you remember most fondly? Is it the Soviets at the Glass House?
Yeah. No, there's and you're asking me which one of my 20,000 kids do I love the most? Mm-hmm. So that they're all great. Every single time you score a basket, and that's one thing, I never got sick of that feeling when you score, whether it was a cheapie on a break, whether it was an easy backdoor cut, never got old. Loved it. Even in practice when you're shooting, never ever got old. Got harder, but always loved that feeling. But the ones there's a couple that stick out if you sort of twist my arm and said, well, you've got to shit or get off the pot.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
The shot against the Russian team in the 2000 Olympics, scores a tied 16 seconds to go. We've just coughed up a 22-point lead, and we're thinking, well, this is all over. Big three on the left-hand wing. Longley comes out to screen me. My man starts with a K. I can't remember his name. My man, steps back to go underneath the screen.
Mm-mm.
My eyes. It's like, when you're feeling, because I'm thinking you're going to be fighting over the top of this sucker for whatever reason. I hadn't had a huge game. I think I only had 12 points at that, 11 points at that stage. I hadn't taken a lot of shots because they've been right up and in, so for whatever reason, he stepped back. He's slow, and that's what you're looking at their feet. And it's only if you see the footage, it's only the slightest step back. Because I was pausing, I'm thinking, Luke's coming. He's going to go over the top. Can I rip baseline? Do I get to the middle? What do I do? And as soon as, and this is where it gets back to what we were talking about before, Liam. As soon as I saw the left foot drop back ever so slightly, this wave of euphoria went through my body.
You didn't even have the rock.
Thank you. Huh?
You didn't even have the rock.
I had the ball.
Yeah,
I had the ball.
Oh.
So I'm there ready to make a drive to the middle or maybe rip a baseline. And for some reason, it was like he just presented me with the greatest Christmas present in my life. Now, you're still going to make the basket, but when they've been wearing you the whole time, it's like, he's giving me the... And it was like, you're just filled with this confidence because I saw, we ain't going to block this. I'm going to get this off. All I got to do is put it in. I've done it 20,000 times in the backyard ever since I was 6, thinking of this moment. Olympic Games, here's a chance to hit a big shot. So I went up there, I was wrapped when it went in, but the euphoria and the excitement was even better just seeing him drop that foot to give me the chance to take a shot.
That's awesome. That's awesome. The confidence of knowing that's the easy bit.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Just getting free was... I was confident. It just kept me, as long as I get open, I felt good. I wanted the ball. I was in that moment. I need, this is my responsibility. I knew my teammates wanted me to shoot it. So everything was right. It was just, can I get open? I just want a chance at this. I knew it was going in. I absolutely knew it was going in. There was no bad thoughts in the head. It was going to go in. And then it was like I had to contain myself because he gave me that little step off and I shot it and it went in, thank God.
Bang. Perfect way to end. Hashtag NBL Rewind to get involved. Drewy, we love your stories. The game was interesting. It was kind of fun to watch in parts to see you and the team. And Illawarra also play their small part in the highest scoring game in NBL history. But we joined me, have a quick chat about all things scoring. Appreciate it, my man. And get back on the golf course tomorrow. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, good on you, fellas. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Hashtag
Drew.
NBL Rewind to get involved. If you haven't seen the game yet, anywhere you watch it, NBL TV, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We'll see you next week.